Hello everyone. Given that last week's topics were about embracing the gender that you chose upon coming into this life, I thought it only fitting to do this video on transgender and transsexual individuals. In the previous episodes, I stressed how important it is to embrace the gender that you chose for yourself upon coming into this life. The reason that I did that is because humanity, if you were to take a snapshot of the way that humanity feels relative to gender, we are in resistance to gender, and whatever you resist persists. If you look at the life paths of the human race, what we are a match to in the future is becoming androgynous beings. Because we contain both divine feminine and divine masculine aspects within ourselves, and where we are headed is towards unity instead of the duality which currently exists, then you would understand that the human race is going to eventually be a race with no gender. But if we are in resistance to gender, we are going to stay a match to gender, including gender issues. And so, I have explained in the past that when you're moving from where you currently are to a place of forgiveness, say, you can't jump that gap. It's like expecting yourself to jump the Grand Canyon. And so when you look at the human race, we are expecting ourselves to jump the Grand Canyon when we move from where we are to embracing androgyny. What we need to do is release resistance to our gender first. So that looks like releasing resistance to my feminine nature if I'm a female and learning to embrace it. Or if you're a male, that looks like releasing resistance to being a male and embracing it. This is the first step which humanity needs to take, which we need to take as individuals, when we're headed in the direction of discovering the energetic nature of ourselves, which is void of gender. When it looks like I am becoming the embodiment of my eternal higher self, understanding that higher self is void of gender. It is both unified aspects of male and female. The next step after embracing the gender that we choose physically for this life is to search for both aspects within yourself. Why? Because we try to get back to the truth of who we are. This is what we are all doing here, seeking enlightenment. The truth of who we are is energy. Energy is void of gender. It has no duality, and so it is androgynous. Thus, androgynous people have a unique advantage. They are actually closer to being the physical expression of the higher self. With people who are transgender or transsexual, it's a little different. It's that when they come into the physical experience of the gender that they originally chose, they don't actually feel that they fit with it. So if you came in a male, you may identify yourself as female and be very frustrated for years because you are stuck in a male body. Or maybe you came in female and you don't identify with being female. You feel as if you're really male, so you're sort of trapped as an alien in your own skin. If you come into a body that you do not identify with, that creates a certain amount of resistance in and of itself. Which is why the first step for transgender and transsexual people is to release resistance to the very gender that you were born. Resistance to your gender keeps you stuck in that gender. So releasing resistance to it, which means finding ways to positively focus towards it, will actually enable you to let go of it. And then you can allow yourself to choose a lifestyle and even a body that you feel reflects the real you. Focusing towards your gender, the one you don't want to be, in a positive way, is not the same thing as trying to force yourself to be that thing. So many transgender people spend years trying to force themselves to be something other than what they are, and it drives many of them to suicide. So for the transgender individual, their task is to release resistance to the current gender they are, and then to allow themselves to flow in the direction of whatever they feel that they really want to be, which is who you really are. While it is true that many transgender individuals do not want to go through with a full sex change, I think it's really important to talk about the concept of a sex change because it is a very big topic within the transgender community, and many transgender people choose to go through sex change. If you pay attention to the way you feel about the sex that you no longer want to be, you will be able to tell whether you're wanting this sex change because you're resisting something that you don't want to be, or because you're wanting to change because you're allowing yourself to be who you want to be, which is who you really are. If you're doing this, if you're wanting this sex change because of resistance, i.e. negative emotion towards the sex you currently are, it's important to first release resistance to the gender you currently are, and then revisit the idea of changing your sex once that resistance is released. You may find you don't want a sex change, but in fact it is much more likely that you will still want a sex change, but this time you will be completely in alignment with it, and you'll be doing it for all the right reasons. So for example, if you are born a male and you identify yourself as female, this doesn't mean that you have to stop wearing female clothes, you have to stop doing whatever you do to enable yourself to project the outward image of being feminine. It just means that you have to sit down and be very honest with yourself in terms of your thoughts and start doing some real shadow work, finding those core beliefs and transmuting, healing those core beliefs relative to being male. So you don't have to walk around like a macho man just to embrace maleness if you came in male and identify as female. You just have to look at your thoughts and release resistance to those thoughts. You can still let yourself dress like a woman and continue going through the steps of becoming a woman if that's what you wish. I just want to stress how important it is for individuals that have any kind of identity issue, because that's what it really is. While transgender is not a disorder, it is still an issue because of the culture that we live in. And so anytime you have an issue, any resistance, negative emotion, it's really important to look at those negative emotions and work through them and heal them. So now I'm going to tell you the real reason that people are transgender. And it has to do with a pre-birth intention. The pre-birth intention for people who come down transgender or transsexual is the search for identity, which can be rewritten to mean this. If I am transgender or if I am transsexual, my intention for this life is authenticity. You can't find authenticity until you experience what is not authentic, in order to find who you really are, which is what we're really talking about when we're talking about authenticity. You have to experience what it is to live a life where you are lying to yourself about who you are. Now this requires identity crisis. So an identity crisis can be caused by either coming down and feeling void of identity, or coming down and feeling as if you are stuck in the wrong identity. This is the real reason that people choose to become transgender, upon choosing the body they come into and incarnate in, upon choosing the lifestyle they choose to come into when they incarnate. So think about the intense contrast and thus expansion that is caused by choosing to come down transgender. Gender is the first form of identity second to choosing to come in as human. Talk about an identity crisis. This identity crisis causes transgender people to go through a period of identity development. Spiritually, they intended before birth to come down into contrast that would cause them to ask some of the very biggest questions relative to authenticity. The first being the need to understand one's self-image. The second being the need for self-reflection and self-discovery. And the third being the need for self-expression. Once a transgender individual feels genuine, authentic, and comfortable within themselves and their external appearance, and once they accept their genuine identity, they have found what is called transgender congruence. This transgender congruence is a lesson for the rest of the world, that you can only ever be happy if you do what is in your heart. You can only ever be happy if you are living a life that is authentic to who you really are. and our external bodies do not always reflect who we really are. And so, it is more than okay for someone who is male but feels as if their true self is female to get a sex change and switch from male to female, or vice versa. We did not come here to allow ourselves to be defined by anyone else. Free will is an absolute of your existence. You chose to come into this life as a male or female, and so you can unchoose it if you like. You want to make sure that any decision you make in life, including changing gender, is coming from a positive emotional space instead of a negative emotional space. You want to make sure you're doing it because changing your gender means going in the direction of happiness, not running away from something. If it is coming from a positive place within you, go ahead and change the gender that you came in as. No one gave you this body, you chose it before coming in. We like to tell this story relative to transgender individuals, which is that you're rejecting the truth of who you are if you want to change your sex. And while on rare occasions this can be true, it is usually not true. Usually, becoming transgender has nothing to do with rejecting the truth of who you are. It has to do with embracing the truth of who you are. Being transgender has to do with learning the lesson of authenticity and being brave enough to teach that lesson to the world by virtue of your example. You help us not get stuck in gender. You teach the rest of us that we do not have to be defined by anything other than who we feel we are in our hearts. That is a lesson we all need desperately. It is not just you who has lived a lie. Most people live lies. We suffer because we live lies and do not let the real us out of the closet. So teach us. Teach us by the clarity of your example what it means to be authentic to ourselves. There is nothing that has gone wrong with you. This is why I feel as if it is not beneficial for me to go into the lifestyle conditions, biochemical conditions, or anatomical conditions that have been linked to the cause of transgender. Those things are nothing but a byproduct of a pre-birth intention for you to come down into this body, to go through an identity crisis so you could find out who your true authentic self really is. In other words, if you are transgender or transsexual, nothing about you needs to be fixed. You are not mentally ill. There is nothing wrong with you. And the sooner you realize that, the happier you'll be. And you don't actually want friends or family that can't understand that. And I promise you, there are enough of us in the world who do understand that, who will embrace you completely for who you really are. Who recognize you as the teachers who teach us how to be us. So thank you, and have a good week.